Okay, it's on. It's on the record. Rajesh.
Right. So, hi, hello, salam, namaste, sat sri akal, and welcome to Law Unplugged. Today we have with us a very budding YouTuber. I mean, but on a personal level, I get inspired by him a lot, and I'm a subscriber too. So I'm a family. I'm a part of the 55K family who has subscribed to Curious Harish. We have Mr. Curious Harish Uday Kumar with us. Uh, he's a third year at BITS Pilani. Tell us, Harish, how are you doing today?
I'm good, man. How are you doing, Rajesh?
Yeah, just fine. I mean, just usual like college stuff, projects, and a lot of
hmm
college. So,
Okay, seems
first thing,
interesting.
like I was surfing to your videos, and so very interestingly that you are very passionate about studying abroad, like so getting into Princeton and like not Princeton exactly, but any of the tier one Ivy League colleges. So,
hmm
like, how did you were you always oriented towards getting into engineering, or how was the decision made?
I mean, as far as engineering is concerned, I think yes, I was always more of an engineering student because back in my sixth grade, fifth grade, I used to like to build stuff. Like even in my junior KG, like if you see my old pictures, I'm always with a screwdriver. So I liked making projects. I liked building stuff. I liked maybe programming. So whenever you do something and see the results of it, that's something like if you visually see the result, that's something that would get me excited. So I think engineering was something that I was pretty stubborn on. I knew that's going to happen. And as far as foreign universities is concerned, now I applied to like one of the most competitive universities, right? Princeton, Harvard, MIT. These are like really tough to get in. In fact, I think 9 or 10 students from India get into MIT every single year. So I don't know why I was feeling optimistic about getting in. My scores were pretty low. It wasn't even up to the average that's required to get in there. And I just applied. I anyway had some backups. I had bits. I was in a way studying a bit for JEE, but my main focus was on US universities. And I was also banking on scholarships, right? Because without scholarships, it's crazy expensive. So ultimately got rejected by all of them and ended up in bits. So that's what happened.
Being
But yeah, I do not regret it at all because especially now, considering it's COVID, dude, if I was in the US, then I would have been stuck, right? It's very difficult. My friends in the US are struggling. And plus, BITS is such a good college. I have an amazing set of friends. Whatever has happened has, I owe a lot to BITS right now. So I don't really regret not getting into Princeton or missing out on something like MIT. But obviously, that's a different league altogether.
right. Yeah. So exactly. I mean, Bits Goa. I mean, it's very famous, right? So why don't you tell me what is it like a day in Bits Goa? I mean, I mean, how do you spend your semester and right? What do you do in the campus basically?
So we have this policy called 0% attendance, which is amazing for people like me, right? Who like to wake up late at 10 and then, miss breakfast, maybe go to the supermarket and grab some bun or something and have that for breakfast. So it's very amazing for lazy people. Plus it's Goa, right? Everyone's laid back. And most people, like if you see at the beginning of the semester, you'll have people attending classes. Like if 200 people have registered, all 200 attend. But as the semester progresses, at the end, in few classes, you'll have like some 2 or 3 students sitting in the lectures. So it's quite an amazing thing. Not all lectures do have that policy, but most lectures have the 0% attendance policy. So what I usually do is at the beginning of the semester, I just figure out which class is important and which class isn't. I mostly bunk the not so important classes and spend it either sleeping or just browsing on the internet or just hanging out with friends. And the important classes I obviously attend. And then it's the usual thing: hustle during the exams and then chill during the rest of the semester. As far as my how my day looks like, most of our classes start at I think 9 or 10, and they go up to I think 3 p.m. or sometimes even until 5 p.m. And after that, you have a lot of free time. So back in campus, I used to mostly hang out with friends, and I was also part of a few clubs. Like one of them was for sponsorship and marketing. So we had to cold call companies asking them to sponsor our fests, and Then there was this club called Center for Entrepreneurial Leadership. I used to have webinars, workshops on different entrepreneurial things. So yeah, that was happening over there.
Yeah, also, yeah, you just mentioned you were cold calling different people. So I just saw your video, the YouTubers you follow. So in that you mentioned you learned cold calling from one YouTuber, right? So
It's
the source of it being in a committee.
okay. So I mean, most of my cold calling experience comes from, DOSM, right? The Department of Sponsorship and Marketing. Because if you can convince a person to shell out like a lakh or 2 lakh on a college fest, then dude, your negotiation skills are crazy. Though I wasn't able to get a lot of money, I think the max I got was 20,000 rupees or something like that. But I know people who get like around 9 lakhs and 10 lakhs through big companies like Realme or Pepsi, and doing that at a college level is insane. So obviously it comes with a lot of rejections. So initially I used to call like 100 people in like a span of a month, and 99 people rejected me. And that rejection is something that I cherish even today, because in life when you get rejected so many times, you just get immune to it. At one point you're like, all right, does it even matter now? Earlier when I used to cold call and maybe get rejected, I used to take it to heart. I used to be like, oh damn, that how can you reject me? That hurt my ego. But now I just don't care, because I'm just so used to it. And I'm really glad for that. I'm really glad that people rejected me. I'm really glad that big companies rejected me. I'm really glad that I cold called big marketing managers at corporations, who after some time just started ignoring my calls and WhatsApp messages. So once you get into that particular phase where you're just shameless, it's quite an amazing feeling, to be honest. Yeah.
I mean, so what we also started in a very similar fashion. Like we used to cold message people on LinkedIn primarily, and Supreme Court and High Court advocates. I mean,
Sure.
obviously they might not have. Obviously they don't have time, so they used to straightway scene zone us. And but I mean that apart, I mean, had it not been like that, then we would have never thought of inviting people like you who are also so the very
So you invite me
very
anytime, I'll come. Like, I'm not some
oh
busy guy.
so I guess this is this is like you are telling us that we could invite you another time then.
Yeah, sure.
Great. But again, I mean it's a lot of fun, and so yeah, I mean, see, what matters is to start. I mean, I was listening to some Netflix director, like some documentary director, and he said that what mattered to him was starting in the first place than being perfect. So I am taking it too seriously with the lighting also today. So I, it doesn't matter. And so coming to the question, how and when was YouTube, your thing? When did you start making videos on YouTube?
I started my channel back in ninth grade. It was me and a bunch of friends. We never really meant to like make a video for India, right? We made videos for our classroom so that we could capture funny moments. If a friend is slapping another guy, I would just film it, because that you cannot get that moment back, right? So I just filmed it and I posted those short funny clips on YouTube. I even filmed I even filmed like friends in washroom. That was our studio, right? We used to do some dumb shit in our washroom, and I used to film that and put in a this thing YouTube channel. And it was more of a fun thing that we used to do for a classroom, 10th B, and people used to watch it. I used to get single digit views, and it was amazing. But soon, after 10th grade, we friends parted, we went to different colleges. And then 11th and 12th grade, JE pressure, your creativity just dies automatically. And then in your first semester of college, uh, I was at BITS. I was just having a walk, and I thought, dude, this Goa place is amazing. It's so beautiful. I've never seen such sceneries before. Why not just film it, right? And I went to Google and searched for BITS Goa. There weren't enough videos about it, right? No student actually went, filmed the lectures, filmed the professor, and did any of that. So I was like, yeah, why not do it? And anyway, I watched a lot of Casey Neistat, so vlogging sort of, didn't seem abnormal, right? So I just went around the campus filming every single thing that I could. And it was really awkward because holding a camera in public in India is, I don't know why, people just naturally tend to stare at you. And like, I don't know, maybe it's an India problem, but like whenever I like hold the camera and walk on the road, some 10 people would just stop by as if they have nothing to do in life and just stare at me saying, hey, why is this guy filming? So apart from that awkwardness, everything else was fine. Because see, I'm making videos for those 1,000 people sitting out there waiting to watch how Bits looks like so that next day they can apply, right? I don't care about that random guy who's going to the mess and stopping by to see what I'm doing. So I soon, went over it and started filming everything, right from mess to lecture theaters to even me. I even filmed the washrooms. I even filmed my this thing, hostel room, every single thing, every single corner of Bits Goa. And those videos got a bit of traction. And yeah, I continued doing that, but then I came back home. So I was like, dude, now I can't use Bits Goa as a clickbait to get people watch my video. I'll have to be original now. So I started putting out original content, like things that I do, things that I've done, and sharing experiences, successes, failures, everything. And I think even those things worked out. In fact, I found that those things worked out better than the Bits Goa videos. I think the Bits Goa videos helped me establish credibility that I'm a Bitsian. And then the later part, made me more of a personal brand than, clinging on bits and using that as something to get views.
Oh, yeah, right, man. Totally. I mean, every student. I mean, I remember that. Okay, the best law college in India is in Bangalore. Okay, NLSIU Bangalore. Then, if you've heard about Nalsar, yeah. So, I mean, each day, random people would just search it up on YouTube, that NLSIU Bangalore campus or campus of this college. So, I mean, that really helps, man. If you shoot that, it's a good starter, actually. Uh, and moving on to the next question, I mean, how long do you want to actually continue this YouTube thing? I mean, how long? I mean, considering now you have got some 59,000 subs, so that is great. So, what do you want to do in the future? I mean, basically, attending your academics, or just focusing on YouTube more.
So I'm like really confused right now. I have so many options. I can either do YouTube. I mean, obviously I can't do YouTube full time, but I'll have to build some business around it. That's one option. Then second option is, going for placements. The third option is taking a drop year and then going for MBA, or the fourth option is going abroad for masters. I am really not sure what I want to do. So I'm trying everything at once. Like yesterday, I had no intent. I've never prepared for placements, but yesterday I just gave Adobe's internship test just to see how it looks like. And I'm just trying my hand at everything, to be honest, to see what fits in. Like when you're so confused, the best way is to explore and see what suits you, right? So I'm doing YouTube, I'm doing placements, I'm trying to focus during lectures, but that seems to be an impossible task. And yeah, so that's what's happening.
Yeah. Regarding that part, I mean, yeah, that is why maybe in law school they make us intern after every semester. In a year, they make us intern like 2-3 times. So yeah, exactly. Experiment everything and then choose. Go deeper and not broader.
How does your internship look like, man? Do you guys debate?
No.
Yeah.
Okay.
No,
That was weird.
No, there are two perspectives to it. I mean, depends on, like, so you want us to answer on how internships look or how we debate? What do you want to
answer? Both.
Okay. So I guess Amay will tell you the internship part.
Okay, sure.
In Bombay High Court.
Okay, sure.
Bombay High Court, that's mad.
No, it's not. The Bombay High Court has a library. Okay, so I was interning in the library, not under lawyer practicing in the Bombay.
That was underwhelming, man. Yeah.
It was. So basically, we are supposed to, first year we are supposed to intern in an NGO. So just out, go out there. If you've heard about CRY, Child Rights and You, so those type of NGOs. So that way. In the second year, they make us intern under lawyers, so that, you attend courtroom. So, how lawyers argue, what questions are asked, and how they argue, how they draft their memorial. So everything from that. So you get to learn what the court system looks like, the nuts and bolts of the legal system in India. So once you approach the third year, then you're free to approach law firms and advocates practicing in the Supreme Court, or even the judges who are in the high courts or the Supreme Court. So I mean, that is like this. So usually we are told to like uh, experiment as much as you can in the third year, and then in the fourth year and the fifth year, you are like, what you choose, the area of law in which you want to build your interest,
Mm.
just go in that. So we can also intern in law firms. There are very good law firms there for intern under lawyers, NGOs, or
Mm-hmm.
even agencies like the Times of India or the Hindu.
Mm-hmm.
That way.
Yeah.
So that way.
Okay, I have a strange question. Okay, in case you're getting into criminal law, do you have that feeling of insecurity that someday someone will come to your house and break into it?
Yeah, that can happen, but that is like very rare. Okay. I mean, I have not heard any such things, but yeah,
Oh,
I mean that
I've
is
seen too
there,
many
right?
movies.
But yeah, that is there, right? I mean, see, for example, that recently happened with, I guess, the Palgar thing which happened, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Palgar
so
incident.
the
What?
lawyer which was representing them, he was also killed. So
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that can happen. So that is a pro and con. So just weigh out.
Yeah, I
But
feel
like,
like corporate law is way more safer in terms of you being safe.
Yeah, obviously.
no,
I
but
mean,
then,
I know
even
that's just my
corporate
opinion.
law firms pay well. I mean, the starting
Mm.
packages start from like 15 lakhs per annum, so that is good. But they make you work until you work to your bone basically. You start your day at 9
Yeah.
a.m. You continue till 11, 12, 1. So that is like
Way
routine. So yeah, again, weigh your
insane.
pros and cons.
but like as far as the like being safe thing is concerned, so you are making the exception a rule. Like it's an exception to be killed while defending, or if it's a very highly political issue, then maybe there are chances, but it's still very very obscure thing to imagine in the first place. Because I mean, there
Mm-hmm.
are so if you know that there was this case in 1970, like the verdict came in 1974. It was a case against Indira Gandhi, and
Mm-hmm.
the judge who was going to deliver the verdict, he was called by the Minister of Law back then. I, I'm not able to recall the name. So the law minister of India calls the judge for a coffee at his place. Now now if the stakes are so high, like if the case goes against the prime minister, the government may fall. So in situations like that, judges are more vulnerable to getting death threats than lawyers, because see, in the
Mm-hmm.
end, what you can do is you can come up with some stupid defenses and like prolong the case on and on. So even if like in Nirbhaya case, it took 8 years for the victims to be hanged. So although the
Mm-hmm.
lawyer was very efficient, the opposition counsel was too good as well. So in
Mm-hmm.
lawyers, it's not very difficult, or say it's not very life threatening to be a criminal lawyer. Rather, it's more
Mm-hmm.
threatening to be a judge who supervises.
Mm-hmm. Do lawyers only become judge later, or is there a separate procedure?
Both ways. There is a judiciary entrance as well. Like you directly become a civil magistrate, like you become a district court judge. And there are also instances wherein lawyers who have worked for 10 years 10 years or more continuously at a particular court, they are elevated to the post of a judge. So both ways, it can
Got
happen
it.
both
Got it.
ways.
So okay, so why don't you tell me what a semester looks like in BitScore? So do you have like vivas, projects, practicals? What exactly is that?
Yeah, man. I mean, obviously, the work of an engineer is way less stressful than that of a lawyer. Um, and we do have vivas, we do have surprise tests, we do have projects, we do have labs. But all of these are scheduled, right? Even surprise test, though it's called surprise test, you know when it's going to happen. So it's really easy to plan it out. Like today, I had a test. I studied today at 6 a.m. So the thing is, engineering is very predictable. You know when what's going to happen and when you should start preparing. And like there are some subjects which just require memorization of formulas. So, for example, today's test, I don't know anything about the test. So I woke up at 6 a.m. I just memorized the formulas, and that's all I had to do for that exam. So it's weird. There are some exams which require a lot of analytical thinking, which require you to sit down and solve. So that's one aspect. And then there are these memorization parts. And we also have humanities. So I've taken 2 humanities this semester. The first one is effective public speaking, where they teach public speaking tactics. The teacher hates me. She says I can't speak properly in public. I lack structure, a lot of things. And the second one is eco-criticism, which is about it's about how you should appreciate nature. It's more about how anthropocentric we are. I think I've spoken about this in a video. Like everything for humans is centered around humans. We never care about the nature. So it's more about how you should be biocentric, and it's about amazing documentaries, right? The professor shows us great documentaries from this Amazon forests and stuff like that. And though we underestimate these things, when I look at those documentaries, the incredible feat that nature has, incredible things that happen in nature, which we just can't see because there's no human civilization out there, is just crazy. It's amazing. So these BBC documentaries and all have made me in a way admire nature, and even those small insects, the amount of crazy stuff they do, the amount of biology that goes behind them is just mind-boggling. So I'm trying to notice this. I mean, this course has taught me to notice these small things happening around me, which we often tend to overlook.
Great. I mean, and what is it in the practicals? I mean, I have also a very question that boy from. I mean, he makes a drone, okay, but the next day because Viru Sahasrabuddhe doesn't approve it, he's like, okay, quits. So I mean, what is it like? Are you supposed to make drones or something, or no? Is it very that, or just written projects?
No, man. I don't know. I think that's some stereotype that every engineer has to make a drone. Most people don't end up making drone. The people who make drone in our college are from the aerodynamics club. So they make RC planes, drones, and anything that flies, they just make it. And the crazy part is the airport is close to our this college, so they have a limit to the height that drone can fly. And as far as us, I mean, I'm in electronics, and most of my time is spent on software. Ironically, right? We do not build physical circuits. We do simulations on MATLAB. There's a popular software called MATLAB. So there you build the circuit, you do the simulation, and once you're happy with the simulation, then it goes into the manufacturing and processing part. So here we just code, different microprocessors and see how that phases out in the real world. So a normal phone, like this thing is made up of a lot of different components, each having a specific task to perform. So we simulate each one of them on the software and see how that performs.
Yeah. Actually, I mean, that field also has many sub branches, right? Engineering, electric or mechanical or
computer science.
Electric. So in that.
So if you're a computer science student, then most of your time would be, spent in logic, in problem solving, right, stuff like that. If you're in electronics engineering, then you'll have to do simulations and stuff like that. If you're a mechanical engineering, even there, like right now, mechanical engineering is mostly software. It's mostly SolidWorks and AutoCAD, where you build stuff and simulate it. For example, if you're going to test aerodynamics of a machinery, then you don't have to go out there, build it, and then run to see how the aerodynamics is. You just do it on the software and see how that pans out. So it's mostly software based. After you're satisfied with the software, you go out there and build it out. And chemical engineering, it's mostly about seeing how different things react. I'm not really sure, but they study about nuclear energy and stuff like that. So yeah. Oh, and pharmaceuticals also comes under chemical engineering in a way, biotechnology, stuff like that.
Right. I mean, but like coming to the non-academic part now. So, engineering colleges are also very fascinated by debates, if I'm not wrong. Like I've seen IITs, NITs and all, they organize debates in their technical fests. And often NLUs are like not...
Yeah, even we organize it, and we have NLUs coming in.
Yeah, so I mean, like, what else do you offer in non-academics? And also, like,
so I think it's because when you talk about non-academic parts, it's not the college that promotes it. Maybe it promotes it through these humanities that I mentioned, But moreover, it's these student-led clubs, right? The one you're talking about is organized by a club called Literary and Debating Club. It's a club inside BITSCOA. So these guys are really good debaters, and they do pretty well. So these guys are the ones who organize it and invite you guys as well. So it's mostly these student-led organizations like Electronics and Robotics Club, or Center for Entrepreneurial Leadership, clubs like these that organize these events.
And like this is a very a question which which has a very personal, like I want to know this basically.
Uh-huh.
Like, what's your GPA currently? Are you acing it in studies or?
My GPA is 7.7, which isn't that great for sure.
On a scale of 10, right?
Yeah, on a scale of 10.
Okay.
Oh, so like it's very weird. I mean, at least for bits, I think I'm a bit above average, but still, in my first year, I did really well. But mostly electronics students mess up the second semester because the grading is really terrible. Even if you do really well, even if you're like Av, you'll get a C grade and a C minus grade. So it all depends on the courses. And plus, I'm not amazing in academics. I just study during exams, like 4-5 hours before exams. That's all my brain can take. So yeah.
Like so why I wanted to ask you about GPA is because you are promoting like no social media, or like staying away from social media to improve your concentration and your other, it
I
messes
don't
up with your brain basically.
see.
So
If
why
I
GPA
reduce my
was
social media time, I would not spend that time studying for sure. I would do something else on the internet. So
welcome to the club, man. Right. That was the only concern. I mean, I thought this is very aesthetic approach that you have taken towards life now, and it's also very necessary because like the screen timing is so insane. We have
yeah,
6 hours of online classes, and then all the books are online because obviously
I'm
because
trying to
of
spend more time on communities. So we are building like a pretty good community, pretty healthy community on Discord. And the amazing part about Discord is that you can talk to people, right? By joining voice channels. So yeah, that's something happening. I'm trying to spend more time on Discord than something like Instagram, which is pretty pointless. It's just strangers posting pictures, which I don't want to see. While on Discord, I'm able to build like really deep relationship. Something interesting happened a couple of days back. On Discord, we meet every day, right? So a guy gave a testimonial saying, I was suffering from depression. I had no one to talk to, but since you guys had this session every day at 5 p.m., I was able to talk my mind out. And now this English speaking session on Discord seems like a counseling session for me. So that testimonial touched my heart. I was like, damn, this is the impact that we're having on people. So that community building is much more important than some stupid Instagram shit.
great, nice. I mean, Instagram is also very glamorous, right? And it's very approach.
Yeah,
It's
man.
glamorous.
I think the only purpose of Instagram is to show off. Even I use it to show off, right? When I hit 50K, I'll post a picture. But yeah,
it's like
I don't feel positivity there for some reason.
The only purpose of giving filters is like to make you look good, right? In the first place.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's the whole purpose.
It's a very fake area, bro. I've seen so many people. I've seen so many people on Instagram who are amazing. They're cool. They'll be like you'll be like, oh, dude, this guy is like the next biggest actor. When I meet them in real life, they can't even talk to me, man. Like they're like, oh, like they'll be really strange in real life. So that online identity versus real identity is something that really it's something that I think about a lot. There are so many people online who they have a completely different identity. They'll debate, they'll be on text, they'll be like damn. And when I meet them in the mess and ask them to debate on face, they can't. So it's very weird, man. People are different online, so I don't know. That's why I never trust anyone's online personality. I know it's completely different from their real life personality.
Right. Totally. I mean, if you, I think you are not active on LinkedIn, are you?
LinkedIn, I'm quite active, yeah.
Quite active. Oh.
But I hate LinkedIn content, dude. LinkedIn content is too bad.
I mean, that guy will be like, I faced this. I met a dog one day, and then the next day when I appeared for interview,
saw that.
Same shit.
Oh, was the interview, right?
So again, okay. So moving on. I mean, we also have a very fun segment which we call the On Your Fingertips round. It is basically the rapid fire round. So, firstly, if not Curious Harish, what would you name the YouTube channel?
Harish Atay Kumar.
Was right, but it was never like a engineer, like engineer vlogs or
Model.
something like that.
Nah.
Idea maybe something like Slay Point or those guys.
I would have just named it Bits Goa, man. A lot of people would have landed. And then once I get like 100,000 subscribers, I'll change it back to Curious Harish.
Oh, but
Makes
then, but
sense.
then the director would have been really pissed, right?
Yeah. I don't know, man. Maybe he'll kick me out of college. And he can't do anything because I wouldn't be under Bits law.
Right.
That's all right.
Okay, so why don't you tell us a memory or kind of a incident which happened? That fanboy moment when you are just shooting around the campus. Someone is like, "Oh, Harish, is it that?" I mean, when you're in the second year, some fresher shows up. Oh, you are Curious Harish, right? Oh, I saw your YouTube video. So that way.
Yeah, so it happens quite a lot. Not quite a lot, but yeah. The thing is, when I got really popular, I was at home, so none of that happened. But when I started getting initial traction, surprisingly, a lot of PhD students and a lot of fourth year students started watching my videos. So when I used to walk to the mess, people used to be like, "Oh, damn, I've seen your video. Good job." I don't know if that he actually meant that or if he just said that because he saw me. But yeah, I get a lot of high fives in the middle because they see my videos. And being an introvert, that's amazing because it's strange, right? When strangers be like, "Hey, what's up? I watch your videos," something like that.
And also, after so many years of doing this, after so many months of, getting those high fives, I mean, it becomes easier to, recognize who is genuine, who is a genuine fan, and who is just
Yeah,
taking it for
exactly.
like you are famous and then they'll suddenly talk to you.
Exactly. So it's pretty good to. I mean, it's pretty easy to know. I'm not saying that I'm a celebrity who's judging people. I'm just saying that as a person with 2 3 fans, I can say this. People who are genuinely interested in your videos, they would tell you why they like your video. Like there's pinpoint that one video that actually made a difference. For example, Rajas pinpoint some videos. People who like have maybe seen like half a second of a video would just be like, "Hey, good video," and then they wouldn't say anything apart from that. So it's quite easy to spot it. And then there are some people who are just simply jealous for some reason. I mean, even I've been there. I've been jealous of a lot of people, but yeah, then there are those kind of people who will thrash you behind someone else's back. But to be honest, the best way of dealing with hatred that I've found very useful is to just ignore, because there's no point getting involved in an online argument. Online argument is like some cowards game. If you really want to argue, then please call me or have a face-to-face conversation. Online argument is so strange, right? You can never win a WhatsApp argument. It's impossible. It's pointless. So I, try to keep myself away from that. It rarely happens, fortunately. So, but still, whenever it happens, I just tend to ignore it.
But also, like the moment you start realizing that you have a lot of stuff to cover on your own, so you tend to like not give a damn about another success,
Exactly.
like
Yeah.
yours. You have a lot to cover yourself
It's
first.
just moving on, man. Like if say I hit 10,000 subscribers and it was like, "Oh damn, Harish, you had 10,000 subscribers, you didn't even have 5 friends yesterday." If I was like that, then how would I ever move on to the next milestone? So
Mhm.
even today, like when I hit some subscriber count, I just try to humble myself and keep pushing myself. This is something that Tanmay Bhatt says, right? When he hit 2 million subscribers, he made a video thanking people, and he said that I don't give a f about whatever I did. I just want to make more videos and make it more entertaining than what it has been previously. And I like that attitude. That attitude of just moving on is the reason why he was able to reach 2 million, and he would, I mean, blow up really soon because he has that attitude of just keeping, just moving on.
Excellent, excellent. I mean, yeah, thank you for this. And last question being, and name any three things in your bucket list.
Go to Los Angeles. The second one would be to get a MacBook Pro 16-inch, which is very expensive. I can't afford it with my own money. The third one is to maybe buy a house. That was such an Indian thing to say, but okay, let's find out a better alternative for that. third one is to have an impact on 50,000 real people, which is what I mean by that is if I could really make a difference in their life, like for example, the mental health guy, he was really able to get out of depression because of the community.
Right.
If I'm able to help 50,000 other people, then that'll make my life worthwhile. Not a house, man. I don't want a house. I'll rent it out. I'll do Airbnb or something.
No,
Yeah,
but
that's
like,
very noble right there.
yeah, just a suggestion. Like, if the house thing is considered as very indigenous in its approach, so I think you could like gift a house to your parents because like it's very overwhelming for them that भाई कुछ तो
Yeah,
सही
I
कर
don't
रहे
know.
हो.
My parents and I have been very independent. Like, obviously, I depend on them for everything. But
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, I don't know. My parents just want to live it their way. I want to live it my way.
Independent as in like they don't meddle with you also, right? Like they have
Yeah,
given you the freedom.
I don't think they really expect anything of me. They don't really expect a house or a car that I should gift them. Though it's a good gesture, but they don't really expect it. So yeah.
And they know that you are big thing on YouTube now. Like the director is given
I
the
don't
thing
think
about
my
your
mom cares. I don't think my mom cares. Still scolds me.
I mean, just that, make good grades, go to Los Angeles. Yeah, that way, if you ask.
weekend to Las Vegas as well.
Yeah.
Okay.
Great.
And
So,
if there was a fourth one, then I would get a boosted board for sure. It's such an amazing thing. So cool.
You get a skateboard.
A boosted board, yeah. It's an electric skateboard.
Oh,
But the issue is we need good roads also in India. That's the only reason why skateboards didn't become popular in India, right? The roads are so trash. You'll fall into a pothole or something. So you need good roads. So maybe that's the first criteria. After you get good roads, you get an electric skateboard.
right. That is the order, right? First good roads, and then. So if the first is not going to happen, then what is the use of the second thing?
I think I'll be like around 65 by the time that happens.
Hope so.
no. No, it will happen soon because with the Hyperloop coming in, I mean, I have high hopes now. Trains are being privatized, Air India is being sold. So, I mean, if
Let's see,
roads are
man.
also privatized, then maybe because it's very easy to talking in legal sense, it's very easy to sue a private entity than the government. Obviously, you can't very easily win a case against the government. So, if
Cool,
things are
guys. You're the
privatized, then
future. Please help me build a road where I can skateboard.
Reality, I'll have to say those two lines. Okay. So I mean, it is a great thing that you. I mean, first of all, we didn't think that okay, you would say yes because, as Rajesh said, there are these people who have many followers on Instagram or YouTube. So it seems like okay, they are apart. They're in the next level. So they won't answer us. So I mean, it was quite a good thing
yeah,
that
yeah.
you
To be very
said
honest,
yes.